Welcome to Human Powered, the podcast about creating a high-performing agency or consultancy business. I'm Trenton Moss, and today I have Jess Hargreaves Paczek, CEO at Pretty Green. Jess, hello.
Hi, Trenton. Thanks for having me.
So lovely to have you here. Now, Pretty Green is a creative comms agency, and as CEO, you lead a team of about 70 people across the UK. And one thing that's really special about your business is you've been awarded Best Place to Work for 4 years in a row by Campaign Magazine and the Sunday Times. Yeah, let's start there. What are you doing to be winners every year?
It's so exciting when you actually decide to take part in something like that, because you are bearing your soul a little bit, because it's all surveys that go to the team. So you can write an amazing award entry, but ultimately the team are being surveyed as to how they feel. And I think then it comes down to the fact that we have such a 360 approach to the business, and this idea of people, purpose, performance being so intrinsically linked. And with that, I hope and expect that people have got a really clear vision of where we're going, because if people know why they're in the agency, we are an agency who builds fame-making campaigns for brands globally, then they're really clear on the vision. But also we spend a lot of time on knowing each other's roles. So we work on a EOS, entrepreneurial operating systems, and we have used that to varying degrees for about 10 years. And the things we've really taken from that is the focus on accountabilities. So everybody's very clear on their job, not that long, lovely job description that when you apply for a job, but actually what are the 5 things I'm actually responsible for? And then with that, what are the rocks? What are the big things we've got to achieve as a company every year? How does that break down by quarter? And all the time, repeat, like, what is our vision? Remind everybody what we're doing. There's a lot of communication that goes on. I've heard from some of your previous listeners talking about that before, that sort of idea of like tell things 7 times, some of your guests. And it's so true. We've just got to keep explaining. And so with that, you hope then that people understand why they're here and what we're doing. So I think that's helped when people then know what sort of a job and what company they're working for.
So it's making sure there's that clarity across the business. Everyone understands the why.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously you've got to have award-winning benefits and all the other things, and pay parity, and just so much investment in the people side, like where you're constantly improving and constantly looking ahead and being not just doing the basics, but going above and beyond, because then you attract better talent, you retain better talent. You're not then having to induct people all the time because people are leaving. So it means that your attrition's low. You've got enough attrition to attract new people, but you're not constantly re-onboarding everybody.
Oh, for sure. And then you are a repeated winner of these awards, it feels like. What are some of the key things that they say about why you keep winning?
You get the survey results, which show, therefore, where people's satisfaction are. And there's sort of this clarity, and there's enough on training. People understand what's expected of them, clarity of communications. So it's really those areas that are the pieces that are ensuring that we've been successful to date. Sometimes you have to look at those surveys and see areas that you have to then improve on. But then again, I think that's why we hope to continue being recognised with the team, because then you look with the surveys, you see behaviours that might have been pulled up, that areas we might not be quite getting right, and then that feeds into the people strategy for the year ahead. So it's that good old Kaizen, continuous improvement is what we're looking for. So, for example, we've got this beautiful benefits package where we've all taught in focus groups and everybody's feel like it's got a lot in there. But there were a few basics that we hadn't realised, like life insurance, which that came up. And then also a lack of understanding in terms of some of the work around pensions. So again, it was just taking those pieces that we actually just hadn't considered and hadn't realised. And also you've got this lovely benefits guide, but not everybody's seeing some of the details. So some of those basics that people need of security, that sort of thing. So it can be as simple as that just makes the tweaks.
It's like you say, even though you're obviously doing a really good job with this, there's always more, there's always something. And it sounds like you've got this great growth mindset around your team where it's like, okay, we're trying our best, but we know there's always room for improvement. And so we want to find out how to improve, and then we're going to implement that.
Yeah, all the time. And I think that's definitely come through even recently in some of the behaviour work that we're doing on our values.
One of the things you mentioned a few moments ago was that you've been operating under the EOS system for the past 10 years. You talked a little bit about it, but I want to get a bit more information on this. Tell me a bit more. What is EOS, and what are the benefits of using it?
So it's EOS is Entrepreneurial Operating Systems. It was devised from looking at hundreds of really high performing companies and looking at what are the traits that made them successful. And so we spent quite a lot of time with a coach on this, and it came right from the top, even in terms of our leadership team structure and our board structure, which we'd tweaked with over the years, as people join, as people are promoted, but without actually thinking about like key roles. So there is a key role. Our chairman is the visionary. My role as CEO is integrator. And then you have somebody who is head of sales and marketing, one of our MDs. The other MD is head of operations, which is basically client servicing, and the other head is finance. And then each one of us has 5 very clear accountabilities because, again, indie agencies, how you've set up, you can so easily wear 5 hats. And so it's very good at allowing you to focus on what really is important, like what is in your accountabilities, what is it that you're definitely supposed to do. And then from that, you set rocks, which are the big KPIs that you need to achieve as a business. They filter down to what you're doing and then all the way down through to the teams. And so therefore, every quarter, when we present to the company, it feeds back to the annual rocks. Everybody then has a pulse check straight after the company meeting within the first couple of weeks to align their rocks with what we're trying to do as a business. And so right now, the company meeting was this week, and our whole focus is simplify to grow. That is given certain types of rocks. And one of the big pieces was redoing a manifesto, for instance, which we got the company on board with. So then we can filter that out. I think it's the process part that's really helped us because you can operate in so many different ways, especially in a creative business.
Yeah, and let's just say in a creative business, it's all too often for everyone to try do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
And it means we're all super busy not achieving a huge amount.
Yeah.
And by operating with EOS, it sounds like everyone has very clearly defined responsibilities, which are their responsibilities. And with the rocks, so your KPIs every quarter, you're expected to do your best to achieve those.
That's right. And also it's a supportive system. So rather than being, these were your rocks, why didn't you hit it? You keep talking about the rocks and you can say, I know I said I was going to hopefully achieve this, but I'm really struggling with this one. Something's come in, we've had a big client, we've had something. So you're then actioning teams around you to help you achieve those rocks. Or you have to, as a business, say, do you know something? We've got to put that on hold, which we've done this year. We've been doing a big systems project, which was part of our rocks, done all the investigation. Right now, we have got so much new business and client work coming in. I just need to put a hold on that and say, we're not going to tick that box, but it doesn't matter because we've decided collectively we're going to do something else. But everybody's then really clear on where something is or isn't going to happen.
Jess, one thing you mentioned just before was that something that I think that came out of your rocks was about redoing a manifesto. My ears pricked up a bit when you said that.
Yeah.
What is it you're doing there?
So this actually has come from less of the surveys from best places to work, but from just listening to the team, doing CEO one-to-ones, which I do every year. We've been doing some feedback training and just all sorts of feedback that's just come themes across the year. And 5 years ago, we did a piece of work on revisiting our values. And then in the last 6 months, we started looking at how our business has changed, basically, how we are, what our 3-year vision is, and where we need to just tighten up as a manifesto. So we've done quite a lot of consultation with the senior directors, but also with everybody in the business. And I've just reset our behaviours, reset our values, And then this week in the company meeting, we took an hour for everybody to take each behaviour, each value, really start to bring it to life. We talked really well about our building fame that matters, Pretty Green for our clients. So 17 years of fame making campaigns. And we have all these beautiful stories of these campaigns for brands. But we were looking, was like, I haven't got the internal stories. Like, what are those stories that people, when they join or when they leave, and those gorgeous stories of like, oh my gosh, we all worked together on this amazing event all weekend and this happened. And so all of those behaviors where we could go, oh, united to succeed. So it's just really framing those in so that people are proud and are identifying with them. So yeah, so it's a really exciting piece of work that we started in November. And now, yeah, it's coming to fruition. We've had values and we're really clear, but it was this next level of going, actually, what are the behaviors? So, one of the behaviors is being united to succeed. And it makes sense, but it makes sense because we have got different disciplines within our agency. We've just acquired a new agency. And when people work together on something, that's when the magic happens, when it's just so many people working together. And we had a pitch the other weekend, and the guys were over in Amsterdam, and they just went all out because that passion to deliver and everybody leaning in and everybody just coming in together to succeed on that. And they won, they won the business. And I think it's because it's that feeling of going, not just going the extra mile, but just really leaning in with each other. And that's what a Pretty Greener does.
That's a lovely story. Can you tell me some more of the kind of key traits or key behaviors in a high performing Pretty Greener?
They relate very much to the values and behaviors, but they definitely come back to like what Pretty Green is. Pretty Green is an old pound note. So we have this idea of having three, our founder named Pretty Green and had this sort of idea of three principles with a Pretty Green, and that informs our traits. So a Pretty Greener should understand that everything we do has to make a return on investment for our clients. So that's the Pretty Green pound note. That you are green and curious. So you're a little bit curious and you want to learn more. And my God, so you should. We've got one life. And also we care. We care about the planet and the environment. So we are pretty green. So those things are what I would say are what would define a pretty green person. Those three areas together, which then feeds people purpose performance. But those traits are really important. And especially we are a B Corp. So that idea that you can have people purpose and performance, do all three is really quite critical.
I love how those key traits tie back to the name of the business and encapsulate this overall employee brand proposition. It's really lovely.
Yeah.
You've talked a bit about that you've always had values, but now you've got values and behaviors. Tell me a bit about what the difference between values and behaviors are and why you did this.
Yeah. It's because the values are the things that we really care about. So and again, you see it in your people. So we talk about with respect is a really clear value, being better every day and having real pride and purpose in what you do. So those are great values, but then you have to almost behave to prove that you can do that. So, you can't get better every day unless you're prepared to embrace risk. And we've put that in as a behavior because, again, independent, growing, it's a rocky time out there. Like the industry's tough. So that idea that you can embrace risk and it's okay to fail because we'll learn something. So that behavior, almost giving people the permission to say you're allowed to behave like calculated risks. So now people can come and say, look, I'd like to do this a little bit differently. Is that okay? I'm going to try it, but we're all on that page. So that's the piece. We've done a lot of work on feedback. The thing with being a Pretty Greener is we are kind. I'd like to think that we're really kind human people, but sometimes that can work against you because the kindness goes to niceness. You don't feed back properly. This whole sort of empathy, compassionate candor piece. We've definitely struggled with that as an agency through ruinous empathy. So we've really said as a behavior is communicate with clarity, like just be clear, feedback quickly, just say it as it is. It's fine. So it's using those sorts of behaviours. So we've really had to work as that as a board as well to make sure it comes down, and we've had to do some training around that area. So especially with new people who came into the business saying, actually, I think you just need to give me hard feedback.
Yeah, and I love that distinction that you draw there between being kind and being nice. And it can be unkind to someone not to give them feedback because it prevents them from being able to develop.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think COVID maybe had a little piece of that post-pitch feedback that used to just come out of a room all together and talk, that we're trying to get that back in again, and it's working. It's so helpful.
So you've outlined all the sort of things that you want Pretty Greeners to be doing. Tell me a bit more about, as a business, how do you proactively encourage the right behaviors across the team?
We have company meetings every week. We make sure people call out, like, that somebody has behaved in a certain way. We highlight people who have lived our values, had it's shown those behaviors. Every quarter, people nominate who has really lived those behaviors or values. And I've just got so many amazing nominations. And it's just such a pleasure to read those out to people, because the board and the leadership team don't tend to nominate. So you're just getting everybody talking and giving such beautiful examples of saying, thank you. I saw you in that client meeting. You were amazing. And you took a risk and you stood up. So that piece really just comes through, and then it comes through in your pulse checks and even in client feedback that we try and ask for. So it's front and center, and they're on the wall and you see them.
So, Jess, you're obviously doing a lot to get feedback from the team and to have a two-way conversation between leadership and the team so you can make this a really amazing place to work. And you talked about surveys. I know that you also run focus groups. And then you also mentioned before that you do CEO one-to-ones. Tell me a bit about all these things that you're doing and why you go to such lengths to get that input from the team.
The CEO one-to-ones, I find, as we've grown bigger, I find them really valuable, because there's people who I might not talk to as much or have that sort of water cooler chat with. So put them in the diary once a year, and ideally 90% of people want to have a chat with me, and they're just like a relaxed one-to-one, and I get so much feedback. And it's like I always talk about these sort of threads in the business of, there just might be something really small that I might not have thought about or realized. And it's just a really useful way to hear and think, gosh, why didn't I think about doing that in a different way? Or so there's just a really, really useful way of getting feedback, and people being able to talk to me and make sure that I know what's going on. Then the focus groups are run for various reasons. We've run them when we've looked at our benefits, and even from coming back into the office 2-3 days a week, people have said, well, I'll happily come in 3 days a week, but my commute cost now is X amount because we allowed everybody to move out in COVID. So with that, we've made a policy where if it's over a certain amount of the average commuter cost, you can claim money back. But that little thing makes a massive difference to everybody's everyday. And even how we were paying benefits, so that it was, rather than having people claim back all sorts of things, it's sort of giving a lump sum twice a year of some benefits so people can really make good use of it. So those sorts of focus groups are useful. And we also get external people to run them. So there's also safe space for people on more sensitive topics, particularly around DE&I, where we really need that. And we also have our JEDI external board, so Justice, Equity, Diversity and Inclusion. That's an external board who helps advise on some of our policies, and even getting their feedback, and us having very honest conversations and having people in the business in those groups, again, helps direct some of the work that we're doing.
What I'm hearing is this enormous time and money investment in engaging with the team. Your CEO one-to-ones, if my maths is correct, probably takes up about a full week of your time. And then with the focus groups, obviously the time and the cost of getting external consultants in. And for you, that time and money is well worth spending.
And obviously, we'll change some things as we go forward and different years, but it is really helpful. We're a people business. This industry is people. We don't sell a product, we are that. So if we're not listening to each other and finding those forums, then I think that's where we'll come into problems. And I appreciate that I'm talking about a smaller independent agency, but I still think there's a need to have that continual feedback and investment in that way.
Now, I think it's brilliant that you're doing that, and it seems like it's paying dividend. And it's not just the investment that you've done in terms of the engaging with the team. You've also invested in quite a lot of team members who are in HR type roles. You're quite heavily indexed on that. Again, tell me a bit about who you have there and why you invest so heavily there.
Definitely back to that people focused business. And the other reason is there's been an increase in investment. One was we brought a talent recruiter in-house because actually that holistic view again of having somebody who really understands the business, who understands all of our values, our behaviours. And so when they're recruiting, they're not targeted on a getting somebody in for a reason. They're salaried. They are trying to get the best person for the roles, and therefore they can see through their responsibilities from recruitment through to retention. So they're really looking at that through to onboarding. So it just makes for a much more holistic approach. And then we recently, about a year ago, hired a permanent people and social impact director. And that person had previously been a consultant of Pretty Green and had been doing external focus groups and had a way of really holding us to account and understanding our business. But also the reason they were brought in is as we're expanding, people was one of my 5 accountabilities. I'm so passionate about this area. I needed to let some of that accountability go. I need to balance on the commercials and everything else that I'm doing and want to do. So that's why we've invested as well in that person, as well as having sort of office and HR management support, which gives you that rounded approach. So yeah, as we expand, that's why we've got this people function to that level.
And again, it's like, as you're saying, as you expand, it's very easy for previous processes and your infrastructure to start creaking. And you're putting these systems and people in place to make sure that your people, your number one asset, are always there being supported and are always being able to thrive.
Yeah, 100%.
And I know as a business, you invest quite heavily in training the team as well. Tell me a bit about what you do with this.
Yeah, there's different aspects of training with our Pretty Green School. So we have internal training programs because obviously we've all got knowledge to impart, but also externally. And so we tend to have a theme each year. So for instance, last financial year, we were really focusing on this value of everyone is creative. So we brought in some specialists who for the creative nudge, and we did a whole day, but it was with the team and our clients as well, so that you're trying to look at behaviors between all of you together to make that work. We've done disc for some of our clients as well. And then we've also been doing a lot on trying to help the team be bolder. And again, that's come back into investing in a coach and a program and her training everybody with discs and into how you use that in everyday life. Everybody says, I want to be trained. I really want to be trained. And then it's like, well, what do you mean by that? So it's trying to have something for the year and then each quarter just being very specific and precise on what it is that might be answering a business need. So in January, we had a full day of resilience training, which to help the team just understand, get a little bit more comfortable with themselves and what is stress and how to manage people, have multiple hats as people in agencies often do.
And I really like what you're saying there, that your plans are always around, well, what is our business need? And making sure that it's tied back to a business outcome that you'd like to get to.
Yeah, very much so.
And as well as all of this, I know that you have is it called the Cannes Lion Awards?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Tell me about those.
That really feeds into, I guess, creative and strategy and trying to ensure that our work is up there. We're working with global brands and we want to make sure that our work is the quality of that work. So we have quite a strict KPI on or a rock on making sure that we deliver so many award-worthy campaigns. Now, that doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to be put forward for an award, but what it does mean is that our strategy team have stringently analysed them against the CAN judging process. So we have 3 CAN lions. One is for amplification, one is for strategy, and one is for creative. And what's lovely then is you reward the teams who win on each category each quarter with a dinner out together, some funds to buy tools for the agency that might make us all improve. But again, always thinking about them working together to make better work.
Wow. So yeah, can line sounds what a lovely thing to do. Jess, you've talked so much about the wonderful things that you're doing in the business. Let's talk a little bit about you and what you stand for. If you could kind of summarize what your leadership style is, how would you describe that?
My style, my natural style is to be fairly democratic as a leader. And I've got trust in people. I think I've just got an innate trust that people want to do good. So there's an ability to delegate and let people really own their role and make things happen. But with that, I've had to make sure I'm quite active with my leadership style. And I've really had to shift, certainly once I became CEO, because previously our chair, who I ultimately report to, took that role. And I think I realized that I needed to step up more and be able to give much more direction and vision and actually take time to set that and take some time out for myself to really be clear in leading and being very, directional in what I was doing. So not as reactionary, because that can easily happen, but actually make the plans, tell people what we're doing, and also push people where they might not want to go necessarily. So take the leadership team and say to them, we need to get off site, and I don't care what meetings you've got, clients, this is really important for your own development. So I've really focused on moving that sort of democratic piece into also setting some guidelines and rules down.
Yes, and look, it sounds like you've been on quite a journey, because I think you've been with the agency for I think 17 years, progressing from I think client services director to ops director, MD, co-CEO, and now CEO.
That's right. Yeah. So that's why it feels like I've had lots of different jobs and lots of different challenges in that time. So yeah, it's definitely kept me fresh.
Jess, thank you so much for sharing everything today. It's been so lovely speaking with you and hearing about your ethos and how that carries through into the culture at Pretty Green. I guess the only thing I want to ask you now is what's next for you and what next for Pretty Green?
Next and now is we acquired a company, Pinpoint Media, in January. So that has been that integration project bit is big. It's really fun. I'm really enjoying it actually. So we've got this day 1 to 100 plan where we're really trying to get the teams together, working on clients. They're so complementary to what we do. And so it's been a real joy to start bringing different teams together, bridging them, but in the right way. The pacing of it, I think, is so critical. I'm learning as I do this, but we've got some really clear plans and guides that we're making sure are happening. So yeah, and we've got our first big joint social next week, and sharing all our monthly company meetings together. So yeah, that's the big piece, especially from an integration to get to performance and people.
Brilliant. And it sounds like you're going through that classic 4-stage process of forming, storming, norming, performing.
Yes, I like. Indeed.
Jess, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been so lovely talking to you. It's been so lovely hearing about what happens on the inside of Pretty Green.
That's a pleasure. Lovely to be here. Thanks, Trenton.
You've been listening to Human Powered, the podcast all about creating a high-performing agency or consultancy business. Thanks for tuning in.